My name's Terri, President, and I want to introduce our board of directors.
Boyd Carr, Isla del Sol.
Hello.
Julie Greenwell, CIO.
Good morning, Craig Vance with Terramar Beach.
Good morning, Peggy Saylor, Spanish Grant Beach.
John Lightfoot, Point St. Louis.
That's everybody.
Chris Lauer.
Thank you.
Chris Lauer.
Yeah, Chris Lauer, he's back there. He is. Okay. And we have a quorum. Yay!
Too bad.
Okay, let me introduce you to elected official. First of all, let's hear from our new state representative, Terri Leo Wilson. Can you give us an update, Terri? And you have a special recognition.
I do. I have a special recognition. Robb, will you come forward, please? Marie was voted by the Galveston Regional Chamber of Commerce as being the Business Impact Year of the Year award. So the Texas House has recognized your efforts, and we appreciate you. So, congratulations.
You too.
Okay, so I think I'll just kind of, let you ask some questions as well, but just to kind of tell you a couple things that affect our area. Of course, we're going to be looking at property taxes. We have a huge, huge windfall that we will probably never see again in any of our lifetimes. So this is the time to take care of a lot of things. We'll be advocating for the Port of Galveston. During COVID, they lost $58 million. There are some ARPA funds out there that did not go to our port where they went to every other port because the classification at the time, they mixed Galveston, because we are a self-regenerating port, which means that whatever we make as income, we invest back into the port, which is a really great thing. But they classified them under hospitality. So they got a small portion of what went to hospitality rather than classifying them as being under a transportation. So, and really it's transportation because we just don't have cruise terminals there. We have, all sorts of goods going through that port. So we will be trying to recover some of those federal monies through both the Senate appropriations, it's not really a bill, and through House appropriations. So Mays will be working on that in the Senate, I'll be working on that in the House, because really we need that. We did have some funds that were set aside, and Roger Reeves, our port director, used those to, otherwise we would have lost Royal Caribbean coming in during that time. So he was very wise, but those funds are now depleted that we had kind of back in reserve because we just didn't want to lose that. And that was a very wise decision on his part. So, but anyway, we'll be trying to cover some of those. A bill that Mays filed, that I just recently filed this week in the House, has been a little misconstrued. There's a group of surfers out in California that are very upset over it. But really, this is the gist of the bill. It switches the burden of the proof to the state instead of the individual property owner. So after a storm comes in and your dunes and your line of vegetation is gone away, you still have your survey that shows where your property ends and begins. Right now, you as the property owner have to prove to the state when they come in, if they say, well, no, we think that the vegetation line is now going to end up here. And it very may well have. I mean, the beach may have eroded, but the burden of proof is now hopefully going to be on the state to show, okay, now that's moved 10 feet into your private property, and we're taking that under the Open Beaches Act. So it's just a switch of the burden of proof from the individual having to prove to the state, no, that's my property, to the state saying, no, now that's our property. So that's really what that act does. The group in California is, saying, well, if you don't want people surfing in front of your house, then you as the private property owner could say, no, you can't surf there. That's not what it is. It doesn't violate any of the Open Beach Act. It's still the same. It's still the same distance requirement. If in fact the storm has eroded the beach and now your property is no longer your property on the state, they can still take that. We all know that according to the Open Beaches Act. So, but it just switches the burden of proof. So that's one that we probably will be affected here locally. I filed another local bill that will allow cities under a certain population, which Galveston falls into, for our commissioners court to determine uniform work hours. So right now cities can decide, well, we're just going to be open, for longer hours Monday through Thursday. It allows that community to decide what's best for that community. And really, for most of us, if you work regular work hours, it's best to be open, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Because it is frustrating for constituents when they go down there and the office is closed and they only got Friday at 4 o'clock off work. But that will just allow the commissioner's court to decide that for that local community. So, we're going to try to provide some form of property tax relief. I have an eliminate property tax bill that probably won't go this session. More and more we get people to sign on to it, but it's really basically switching to a consumption-based tax. So, but I do think that there'll be some relief on that. So, my two committees that I got put on is pensions, investments, and financial services, which that's not my background, so I'm gonna be relying a lot on Sally to talk to me about, our pensions here. So obviously I'm a recipient of TRS, so that will be a big one this session. I'll probably abstain from those votes. Not that I don't want the teachers to receive a COLA or the 13th check, it's just that directly benefits me. So if you see me abstaining on it, it's not because I don't think the teachers deserve that or need that, because they have not gotten a cost of living increase in a very long time in their retirement funds. So I do think it's needed, but just kind of puts me in a difficult situation. I don't think it'll fail by one vote. I think that there is a will absolutely to do that. One of the things that we'll be concerned about in all of the areas is, since we do have a big pot of money, everybody wants some of that pot of money. So we will be looking, I think, at least me on a conservative end, is what can we shore up for a one time. What I don't want to see happen is create all of these different government programs and that we have the money for now, but we won't in 2 years. How are we going to sustain that program? So we need to look at already what we have. Infrastructure is much needed in many areas, not just in my county, but across the state. Those are really great projects to receive some of that money. I do know that we're going to be looking at school safety is a big issue. I think that there'll be a significant amount of money dedicated for that. The governor, if you've heard his priorities, he came out with those on, I think it was Thursday. And one of those priorities is a bill that I filed on fentanyl. So we have a crisis just not in Galveston County, but really across the state. And so my bill is legalizing fentanyl strips. They've always been classified as drug paraphernalia, but they're really not drug paraphernalia. So it'll be removing them from that classification and allowing, emergency workers, first responders, police to not only use those to protect themselves, but also to know how to best treat somebody what they overdosed on. And it will help law enforcement as well trace back to the dealer. We know in the case where you saw that 2 people died within 2 blocks of each other in Lamarck, that's also in our House district. But because the police were able to use that tracking system, they could find out who the dealer was that sold to both of those individuals. So it will allow that. It will also allow a parent to test. But just a very small amount on your skin can kill you. So we've got to allow a way for people to know what is going on with their own kids, teachers to know what's going on in school. They probably won't be part of any of the budget per se, but they'll be available. In other states, they're like $2, so they're not very expensive. It would just allow for the sale of those. So does anyone have any questions? Yes.
My pet peeve is the bill about the people from China, North Korea, Iran, and Cuba buying property in Texas. I know that's on the agenda. How much pushback is that getting from?
It is. I don't support it in its current form, but it may be amended. I am okay, absolutely, with foreign entities not coming into our country or our state and buying up, massive amounts of property, especially like we've seen it near military bases where that's absolutely a national security risk. But what I don't want is, somebody that was persecuted in another country that came here legally that, I don't want it to prevent a foreign person from buying property. So I think the language needs to be worked on a little bit. I do think, that's one of the, benefits of being an American is owning your own property, and I don't want to close that to individuals. So we'll look at the language. Yes, what?
As long as you're here.
Yes, exactly. And I think the wording of the bill in its current state is a little bit problematic. I do think it will be amended to clarify that we're prohibiting entities and governments and, nefarious people from doing it, not from people that are refugees here and have a legitimate, reason for being here, and we know who they are. Yes?
Gambling.
I am opposed to it. I know that there will be several measures pushed to at least put it on the ballot for people to vote on. I'm willing to listen to the arguments on the other side of the fence, but the data just is not there. There's been lots of studies done where it's opened up a city, and it's not, in the end, it hasn't benefited the city from making a ton of money like promised and opened it all these jobs. What it really has done, if you look at Atlantic City, it's a dump now. If you look at several areas where they've done this, it hasn't benefited the people that actually live there. So, it brings in sex trafficking, it brings in a whole lot of other businesses to that area. So generally, I am opposed to that. Yes.
Good morning, Terri. Peggy Saylor. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Yes.
Are there any initiatives that you're aware of to implement more restrictions on local communities? For example, like over the past couple of years for drilling regulations, and then for building materials that we can use. Curious as to how that philosophy stands and what your support would be for anything that would begin to take something away from the municipalities or the home rule cities.
Yeah. Generally, I'm in favor of local control and limited government, so I don't like a ton of regulations placed on things. So I would have to read, like any other bill, the language of the bill to determine whether or not it's a good bill or bad bill. But for the most part, I don't like the state government or the federal government telling local businesses or communities what they can and cannot do, and doing that through regulations.
How about STRs, short-term rentals?
I haven't seen any language there, but do you know of a bill number, a particular
I keep
bill
hearing
number?
discussions, I don't know the bill number. I keep hearing discussions about the possibility of at least that being discussed, but I don't have a bill number. But if I hear anything more fundamental than I know now, I will reach out to you or your office to let you know. That's something that I think many of us, I'm from League City, have a home here in Galveston, but many of us as residents have some strong feelings about. So
Yes, and I have my own, so.
good for you, thank you, I'm glad, appreciate it.
But, in the end, I feel like I need to do what's best representative of my community, and what I campaigned on. And so we will look at those things. If you know of the bills, if you have a pencil, let me give you my office number. Saul Mendoza is my chief of staff. He's a very experienced chief of staff, so he's way knowledgeable on tons and tons of issues. So, but it's 512-463-0502. So call me anytime, and if you see something coming through that you're opposed to or that you're concerned about, please call my office and let me know about it, and let me know, why, the reasons why. I really do want to know that information.
Can you repeat your number?
Yes, it's 512-463-0502. But I do want to know that. I'm joining 2 study committees, especially as a freshman. I think it will be very helpful. At 8 a.m., I'm meeting with a group. One is more policy orientated, and what is good government and good policy, and we're looking at a bill from that aspect. The other one will be that we meet every day before the floor and go over each and every bill that will be up on the floor that day. So I think that'll be a really good review because the House side, for those of you that don't know, it kind of looks like we're doing nothing right now. But we technically cannot hear a bill by state constitution until March 15th. So we are just organizing our committees. Now that the governor has come out with his priorities, we can select those priority bills and start working on those now. But the House side, March 15th, will be, once the filing deadline is over, it'll be 9,000 bills coming through in like 2 months. So it'll be like drinking from a, fire hose for sure. So, if you see something, please don't hesitate to call, for or against, either way. I'd love to hear, what my community thinks, so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terri Leo. Appreciate it. Hand it. We'll hand it to Marie. Let me introduce you. Thanks so much, Terri Leo. Let me introduce you to Marie Ross, our
Sorry
city council
about,
member.
this is my leftover San Luis salute look, so. It's when you wake up too late to take your hair out and get half your false eyelashes off. Anyway, it was a wonderful affair, and Pitbull was there last night, and he did a great job. Even though it was the second time we saw him, he did a great job. But, we really are blessed to have Terri living on the West End, living beachfront on the West End. Like, we couldn't ask for anything better. And both Terri and Maze they work with me on a regular basis. I'm in touch probably with Maze more just because we had already started working on things so many years ago. But Terry's about to feel my wrath and hear me every day too, because as y'all know, I'm not shy. One of the things that so Galveston County Day in Austin is March 1st. So I'll be up there on the 28th, March 1st, and March 2nd. We already have some great meetings set up with important people to us, including Don Buckingham. But also, we'll be meeting with Gas One to put the legislative hit on them to get the darn gas lines all the way through the end of the island. So, always working on that. But things are kind of crazy right now at the city with all the things that are going on with the park board. And it's taking up a lot of people's time, which we wish it would kind of just pass on by. Because, just so everyone understands, the ordinances were done because of something that was actually done in 2015 when they ignored the charter and the city and state law as it exists and stopped depositing the hot tax at the city, which is state law, charter law. And so we had to do 2 ordinances to rectify that. Now we have an item on the next upcoming meeting about undoing that, which I don't think we have the votes for, but who knows, who knows. But we have a lot of good things going on. It's hard when you went to sleep at 2:30 and you wake up looking like this and have to stay like this to like really sound impactful. I think I'm more impactful with my hair down, but we are working on a number of things, one being the article that was in the newspaper this week on beach access. You know, sometimes they could get it a little wrong, but I can tell you straight out, that article was a lot wrong. And not only that, they did not talk to anyone at the city. I guess they tried to talk to Kyle, but he wasn't available. But they actually never even called him. And if you haven't met Kyle, Kyle is our new coastal guy. Great guy, came to us from T. Baker Smith and the Corps of Engineers. So we are very excited to have him. But the beach access plan, the only part that we weren't in compliance with had to do with signs. And we actually achieved placing the signs by January 20th. And they still came back and said, oh, we saw somebody stole the sign. So, and we had a great meeting with Dawn Buckingham and her staff. They came down to the city, and we are moving forward with 3 changes we need to make and a number of other changes. Because some of the things that are in there, such as the requirement for parking, are kind of like 10 times the amount of parking we need, or it's putting parking in an area of a beach where that went away with Ike and it no longer exists. So we're making it more reasonable. We're trying to get the cars off the beach, which will be better for everyone, including turtles, birds. But we are very close to, well, we've already submitted the 3 amendments, right? Jim?
Yes.
Yeah. And, which they were holding us back from doing. So things are moving forward. But Tim's going to talk about that. And we made him get up this early, drive in from Pasadena, so I won't kill his thunder. Let's see what else is going on right now. Oh, we will be having the master drainage meeting. The city had one in December, but they had it down at the 30th Street pump station, which I don't think is fair to our district as well as District 5. So they will be having the master drainage meeting at Moody Gardens. And I believe it's March 7th. Do you know the exact date? I think it's March 7th, but I'll get that information out through Jerry, so that people on this side of the island can comment on our drainage issues and the things we have, because we certainly have a lot different issues than what you might experience in town. 3005 is still an ongoing project, but somebody mentioned this to me today. The signs are switching back to 50 and 55.
Notice that.
If you haven't noticed, they are. The other sign that we got changed is from Spanish Grand Bayside to the Country Club. It is now a legal speed on golf cart. So you can now drive your golf cart to the golf course legally. Everything else continues to move forward. I'm going to say any questions, since I'm half brain dead today.
Well, since I was successful on the one, let's start another one. I think people know you're from the West End when you say, I don't go down there in the summertime, you know, and we don't go into Galveston once the tourist season starts. But the seawall, I don't know, Seawall Boulevard, is that all TxDOT from one end to the other, or where does it stop?
Seawall Boulevard is city and county.
Okay.
3005 is TxDOT.
Okay, I don't know where that ends.
Well, it ends right about the dead trees is TxDOT. And then the seawall is
The other morning I was headed to the ferry, and it wasn't early, it wasn't commute time really. I got stopped at the traffic lights there on Seawall Boulevard probably 6 times with nobody waiting to come through.
Text me, so I can tell you the other day. So they adjust the lights for the parade. And when I drive in, I work out early down on like 35th Street. And as I go through the lights, I text our guy in charge of that and say, timing on 37th is off, timing on 39 is off. So if you see that, text me, I get it to them.
Okay, is there any future plans of us coming into the 1980s with sensitive lights, smart lights?
We are taking the lights up to sensitive smart lights, but you will still see them adjusted for events like Mardi Gras.
Well, they could be adjusted then, the day or the minute of the event, once they're smart lights. They don't have to be.
We are moving to more and more smart lights, and we also have put generators on all the lights, so you won't see when the storm knocks out the electricity, you won't see that issue happening where the light's flashing.
When they remove the dead trees again, is there any thought of putting a large traffic circle there? So that, because what happens is people come down looking for parking spots, they hit that spot, they panic because now they realize they're headed off into no man's land down here in the West End. And the turnarounds there don't make any sense. I've seen at least 3 semi-trucks that have tried to make U-turns there and ended up off in the muck and stuck in the mud, blocking traffic. If there was a large roundabout right there, it would be a simple turnaround for people headed back the other way.
I mean, it's a good suggestion. We've even, like at times, because people who live in all those apartments, they have such a hard time crossing the street. And they talked about lights, but it would be a blind light, so it would be an issue. But I'm now the city's representative on the Transportation Policy Committee, so I can bring it up. But I can tell you it won't be anything soon, because they're still not done the project they've been working on for 4 years.
Right.
So, but that's a good idea.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Maybe at the same time, they could put irrigation in, so the trees don't have to be changed out every week. The city does water those trees now.
They could put a little oasis in the middle of the traffic circle with just a couple of trees.
No, they put in fresh sod. Remember when that went in? It's like, you're putting in fresh sod without water? How do you do that? Anyway, other questions?
On the beach, is it all gonna go away even on the west end, all the way down? What's gonna happen with that?
Our goal is to eventually get all the cars off the beach by providing alternate parking lots. Yes.
All right, right here.
Well,
Good morning. You look great. I like you.
I like you hair up or hair down. You're great either way.
yeah.
Yes, well, I'm not gonna go there, Jerry. You can. Marie, would you like us to send you text when we observe ponding? Craig and I were talking, and I don't know whether it's text dot related. I don't know what it is, but we're certainly not experiencing less ponding. If not, it's more with very minor rain.
The best thing you can do is to text me as soon as you see ponding, water gathering, big pothole, anything. Text me and I can forward that text to the appropriate people. And it pretty much get, you know, in your neighborhood, you had an experience, it will get taken care of in the next 5 days. But we are still working on this drainage thing with TxDOT, and it was funny because I accidentally called one of the top people, Eliza Paul.
Accidentally?
Well, it was, sort of. I wanted to see if I had her number on my phone, and I called her. But she called me back. I was in a meeting, but I called her back. And we are finally hearing back from the crews that have been working on this. because our guys call TxDOT and they don't return calls. And that's crap, you know, and for this to be going on this long, when we know they dug the ditches deeper than the cauldrons, we're always gonna have issues, so they're gonna have to fix that. And I know when Juicy was here at last meeting, he's like, they'll say we're road people, not drainage. Well, on this project, they were drainage and road, and we're gonna hold them to it.
Thank you.
Julie?
Oh, no.
Oh.
I'd like to know who's responsible for maintenance of like Stewart Road and all the crossroads. It's terrible, I mean.
As far as the vegetation growth,
Maintenance, mowing, trimming trees.
if you text me what areas, or I can,
I've been-
if we either get the marshal out and the homeowners, or our parks department goes out.
Stewart Road looks like a dump. I mean, we have nice houses out here, and people come to visit us, and they're like, do you live in the ghetto or what?
Yeah.
I mean, from fence to fence, somebody should be responsible for mowing that and maintaining that.
Well,
I've been emailing you. for
okay,
several
and every time you email me, I do pass it forward to parks, and you've seen them out there sometime. But we also, sometimes it's the property owner's responsibility, and we send the marshal out, and the person gets fined, and sometimes they just pay the fine and they don't fix it. And when it gets to a certain point, I still say, send the parks department out.
I mean, we went to vacation in, on the beach, Alabama, right? I mean, when you get off of I-10 all the way to the beach, the road is immaculate. No trash, I mean, the grass is mowed perfectly, but out here, it doesn't seem like we can get.
Well, the mowing of 3005 and the trash pickup is actually TxDOT's responsibility. And oddly enough, in all of Texas, TxDOT only has 4 mowing crews. So that kind of tells you how often they will be out here. But I will say, for the first time, when they were mowing in the last month, they actually had a crew out the next couple days picking up trash. Because a lot of times, again, I'll just be so annoyed and I'll call the city manager and say, hey, can you get parks out here? It looks so bad. But TxDOT actually had cleanup crews out here with them.
Well, I'm not actually Stewart Road, more
Right,
that's city.
right. But like, you see a lot of trash somewhere or something way over, just text me the street number. And I know you email me, but just, 10 Mile Road, 8 Mile Road, whatever it is. Do you have my number? Okay. Does everybody have my number? If you don't, it's 409-256-4518. Any other questions?
I got a tax bill, I paid my tax bill at the Stewart Mansion.
Mm-hmm.
I got a mud tax bill that I paid for $8,000. Then I get another mud tax bill that's assessed out in California, and for condos. There are no condos in my lawn. And I had talked to, the Galveston County tax assessor. I'm about ready to go to city council, because I would explain to them, there are no condos in my lawn.
Have you talked to the people who own your PID?
Yes.
And what did they say?
They
'Cause
say that, they're out in California, and, some architect or somebody had drawn these, condos even before I owned them, the Stewart Mansion, and they can't do anything about that. But, I'm not gonna pay that.
no, I wouldn't either, but,
Yeah. I mean. who
so
did-
the city isn't, like, it is, that PID is kind of tied to the city, but not really. That's a PID that was done very unusual. It actually came up the first time I was on council, and I was not a supporter of it. but the
I wanna be
council after me.
respectful. I do wanna be respectful, but there's nobody that's accountable.
Yeah.
In the whole chain of people, I talked to 6 people now, including the attorney for, the tax assessor at Galveston.
If you text me a picture of that,
Yeah.
Dick can give you my number, and, I'll show it to our attorney to see if there is any suggestions.
Yeah. Thank
You're welcome. Am I free?
Yep.
I'm still gonna stay.
Thanks so much, Marie. Take a break. Get some sleep now. I want to introduce you to another elected official. That's Taz Jones, City of Jamaica Beach. Taz is also our YouTube person. Okay. Also want to have Peggy talk about, she's a corporate sponsor, Will Be Financial. Did I catch you with food here?
I can always talk, Jerry. Peggy Saylor, I'm on the board of directors for Wellbe Financial, and I'm also treasurer of the board. Wellbe Financial, as we've talked before, is a $2.4 billion financial organization. We are a credit union. We have 21 branches. Our footprint is from Galveston to Sugar Land to Pasadena, so we have a wide swath of the area. I wanted to tell you that at any point in time, whether you are one of our members or not, if you have a financial question, if you have anything that concerns your accounts at another organization based on a cybersecurity threat, we are there to provide information. We feel very strongly that we care about the community, so whether you are one of our members or not, we want you to know you're welcome to come in and use us as a resource. So to that end, we have enjoyed being a corporate sponsor of this organization and certainly look forward to helping the community in any way we can. And to wrap this up, I don't have any Wellbe swag today, and shame on me, I will change that. However, because I'm involved in League City, we are going through a relabeling, so instead of being sailboats and trees and all the other great things we identify ourselves with, we are now League City Texans. So we have come to the conclusion that we will hopefully never change the date we were chartered. We will not change our name, so we're going to settle down on this. I have one hat, so for anyone who's interested and wants to come and talk to me after the meeting and tell me about a Wellbe experience you've had or any questions, one person will get a hat. And then if this is really popular, I can come back with more hats. So we as a financial organization recognize that it's all about our members, and that's why we're here. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Peggy. Some house cleaning. We've got to approve the January 31st financials and the January 21 minutes.
So moved.
By Peggy. Second? Second by Craig. All in favor?
Aye.
Passed. Okay. So I don't know if anybody from the police department is here for a West End report. I didn't see anybody come in. Okay. So let's go to Sally Bakko in the Gulf Coast Protection District. Sally? Oops.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sally Bakko. I'm the Director of Policy and Governmental Relations for the City of Galveston, but I'm here this morning to give you an update in my role as Board Director for Gulf Coast Protection District. A lot of news to share with you. Earlier this month, I was in Washington, D.C. and was able to meet with some of our congressional delegation, including Congressman Babin, Congressman Self, and Congressman Weber and Congressman Luttrell to give them a short briefing on where the Gulf Coast Protection District is right now, as well as our new delegation members, Self and Luttrell, a little more information about the project and what it means for supply chain protection for the state and for the nation. Importantly, we were able to have a meeting with the U.S. Assistant Secretary for the Army for Civil Works. That was our board chairman, Mayor Michelle Bechtel, our vice president of our board, Bob Mitchell, myself, our Commissioner Billy Combs, who's also a board member, and we were able to talk to Mr. Connor about some of the key points with this project, and a couple of observations he made. One, in terms of moving up the opportunity for funding for this project, being able to put it in the context of a national supply chain concern is very advantageous. That message really seemed to resonate with him. Another important message that he gave us was, this is a huge project. So it has to be looked at in terms of how can we pull pieces of this project out in measurable accomplishments. And one of the items that we talked about was the beach and dune system. That clearly, we want to proceed as quickly as possible with the pre-construction engineering and design of the gate system. That's the economic engine for this project. But one of those measurable accomplishments that is meaningful protection is that beach and dune system, and he agreed. So we were very encouraged by that. Another meeting that I had was with Andrew Peterson. He's the supply chain advisor to the Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of Transportation, Port and Supply Chain Envoy, General Stephen Lyons. And this was, I think, an important meeting because the Department of Transportation is really focused on identifying supply chain vulnerabilities, and for the Department of Transportation to become a messenger on this project, identifying this area as vulnerable to supply chain for the rest of the country, and identifying this project as a priority is really going to help us get that message across to Congress that we need to expedite funding for this project. Now, you hear me talk about supply chain a lot because, as I said, that's the economic engine for this project. It's the train leaving the station, so to speak. But what we want to make sure is that the beach and dune system catches a ride on that train as early as possible. And so right now, the Corps is putting together budget details on their request for funding this project. $100 million the first year, $500 million the second year. Well, here's what's important to know. Of that $100 million the first year, $20 million is allocated for the Bolivar and Galveston beach and dune systems. Okay, now you have to remember the first thing we have to go through is sand sourcing and the supplemental environmental. $20 million the first year for Bolivar and Galveston beach and dune system. Second year, $380 million. Bolivar beach and dune and Galveston beach and dune system. This is a tentative budget detail, all right? But again, it's the $100 million first year, $500 million second year. Yes, Councilmember.
And one thing you should know is we already had the design and engineering going on from the end of the seawall to 13 Mile Road, and you were able to do an agreement with the GLO, correct?
That agreement is not with the GLO. That agreement is a memorandum of understanding for in-kind work with the Corps. The Corps has to initiate that agreement. They have not given the board that draft agreement yet. We are expecting that later this month, hopefully. We don't understand what the holdup is, but we are anticipating that, and that is exactly what we are pressing forward with. What I find encouraging about this budget detail is the recognition that it's a delicate balance here. Yes, the economic engine is the gate system. We're going to proceed with PED on that. but a measurable accomplishment, real accomplishment, is this beach and dune system, and we're going to move that up into the sequencing of how this project is addressed. This is very, very critical and something that we're going to be working on very hard. The key is to get the money. So we're working diligently in communicating with Congress and with the Corps headquarters, because let's not forget bipartisan infrastructure bill funding is out there and available. So we're going to be pursuing 2 tracks, that funding that's already appropriated, and then funding that will be appropriated for fiscal year 24. Meanwhile, with the state legislature, we have House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 1. These are the base biennium bills for fiscal year 24-25 for that biennium. We have $500 million in both of those bills for GCPD. $200 million of that will be for the non-federal share for the Coastal Texas project. All right, so we got $6 million coming from the feds, and we've got $200 million coming from the state to act as the non-federal share for that $600 million. This is very encouraging. It is sending a tremendous signal to Congress that the state is ready to step up. Now, one last piece of information. This is what I am most excited about. This week, State Representative Dennis Paul filed a bill, HB 2416. It is the Gulf Coast Protection Trust Fund. What it would do is create a trust fund specific to be administered by the GLO, but specific for expenditures for the development of infrastructure necessary for protecting the Gulf Coast within the jurisdiction of the Gulf Coast Protection District. Okay, so that would include the 5 counties, Chambers, Jefferson, Orange, Harris, and Galveston. What I find particularly exciting about this is it's a designated fund for this project. So what we are telling Congress, the state is not only ready to step up and appropriate money, the state is ready to create a designated fund for the purposes of serving as the non-federal share funding source for this project. That's huge. That is really huge. So this is definitely on my radar. And we're going to be working very hard this session to try and help Representative Dennis Paul get this bill
And the
passed.
most important thing about that, it means that they won't have to add more taxes.
That's right. Why would we want to add taxes for property owners in 5 counties on a project that clearly benefits manufacturers, businesses across this state? Yes, sir. And the nation.
Does that law, is that bill going to be funded?
The bill is not funded now. First, you have to create the fund. Okay, and how we capitalize that? Right now, we have $500 million in the base budget. Okay, remember? So my hope is, and my effort is going to be, get this trust fund created, and we can capitalize that start capitalizing that by the funding that's already in the base bill, assuming that survives to the governor's desk, excuse me. So yeah, absolutely. But this is very, very encouraging, and it is once again a signal that the state is recognizing this project as a priority for the state. And this is really important for you, because a beach and dune system will be created, and that beach and dune system renourishment will occur every 6 years, and that will be paid for 50 fed, 50 non-federal share. This is just life-changing, I think, for the West End, truly. Yes, sir.
Who actually is responsible for the beach and dune? Is that the Corps?
Yes, sir.
Going to do that?
Yeah.
And have they settled on a design for for dunes that includes, fortified dunes, or is that still up in the air?
Right now, what we have in place is the feasibility study and the recommended plan from that feasibility study that was signed off on in a chief's report. That chief's report is what was authorized in the 2022 Water Resources Development Act. So what that entails is a double dune system, 15 feet and 17 feet, all sand, plus a 250 feet expanded beach. Now, the Gulf Coast Protection District Board has had many discussions about this, recognizing that we need to be looking at fortification for these dunes. When we look at what happened to Louisiana with two storms, two major storms, 12 miles apart, 6 weeks apart, an all sand dune system is wholly inadequate. So the Gulf Coast Protection Board already recognizes that we need to start evaluating fortification materials, and how that can be incorporated into this project. Any other questions?
Back here, Sal.
I can't let I can't let you get by without asking questions since I'm batting 100% for each speaker. Sally, I don't think a lot of folks appreciate how involved Representative Dennis Paul has been reaching out to constituents with flooding and drainage. He supports and is very aware of many of the committees across the region that address flooding and drainage and the infrastructure thereof. If you agree, I would ask, as you think it's appropriate, if you could email or reach out to Dennis's office and thank him personally for what he's doing with this bill. He worked very hard to talk to different constituents to see what our concerns were, and he is a man of his word. He told us he was going to try to move out on this, and he has. So I think to show support from us, even though it's early, would be great, and to let him know that if there is a need for us to have a grassroots effort to support whatever's going forward, that we will be there for him. I think that would probably speak very well for us. And I hope you agree with that, Sally.
I not only agree with it, I beat you to the punch. This bill was filed yesterday, and when I saw it filed, I immediately emailed Greg Bench, who is Representative Dennis Paul's chief of staff. I gave him many thanks for this. I gave him my assessment of what not only this does for the project, but the message it sends to Congress. And I also asked to meet with him this week so that we can start discussing strategy for reaching out to the business community. I've already reached out to Gina Spagnola with the chamber to get their endorsement and support for this bill. The idea being, once we have the Galveston chamber, we can start reaching out to other chambers, and we can reach out to the Texas Association of Business. I also plan on reaching out to the Texas Association of Manufacturers and the Texas Retailers Association to step up and show their support for this bill. These are organizations that showed support for the legislation that Representative Dennis Paul authored along with Senator Larry Taylor to create the Gulf Coast Protection District. And each one of those organizations signed up in support of that legislation. So my hope is they're going to come back and express their support for this as well, because this will be a critical component in making this project a reality.
Thank you.
I ask a question, Sally. The pilots unions are concerned about the large ships that are coming, and that the gates won't be able to handle them.
Yes, sir. There has been a lot of conversation about that. Our board president, Mayor Michelle Bechtel, is also a commissioner on the Harris County Pilots Commission, and he has been working very closely with the pilots on this issue. We obviously want to engage with them as design begins, but we have to remember the federal process, all right? Not a dime has been spent on design of this gate system because you can't spend a dime on something not authorized yet. So we got authorization in December. Now we have to get the dime. And that's the next step, getting the funding. But clearly, the Corps has every intention, and the Gulf Coast Protection District has every intention of engaging the pilots on this. And as we proceed through pre-construction engineering and design, we are designing something that is going to be effective and serve its purpose. That's going to be essential, but I think there was a lot of confusion on this, both in the Houston Chronicle article and in the Senate Finance Committee hearing earlier this week with regards to, well, what's been spent? Well, nothing's been spent because we can't spend. And we have a recommended plan, but that is a 30% feasibility study design that clearly has more work to do and issues to address, and we expect the pilots to be a partner in that.
Good news.
Thank you, Sally. Appreciate the report. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Thank you so much, Sally. We'll go to Craig Vance and give us a Beach Maintenance Advisory Committee report.
Thank you, Jerry. Good morning, I'm Craig Vance. I represent, I guess, the West End on the Beach Maintenance Advisory Committee at the Park Board. I'm in my third two-year term, and at the end of this year I'll be out. So we'll need a new representative for the West End, so anybody interested. At our February 3rd meeting, we meet the first Friday of every month, by the way, down at the Park Board building. On Friday, February 3rd's meeting, we had Dr. Chris Marshall. He's with the Gulf Center for Sea Turtle Research, and he gave a presentation. They've been doing for several years now a study of nesting sites and conditions along our beaches in Galveston. And believe it or not, there's lots of different turtles that nest here. But they have found that the conditions aren't the greatest to produce eggs, and they live and go on. So what they do in their testing is they simulate nest in the dunes and use like weighted ping pong balls and all that, and just see how tidal affects, take the eggs away or not. And so the conditions aren't optimal to hatch the most eggs. So what they do is when they do find active nesting sites, they collect those eggs and send them down to Padre Island, where they do have a facility to care for those eggs and let them hatch and release into the wild. So, and because of that, they're fundraising to build a new facility at the A&M campus on Pelican Island. That would be a hybrid facility with a hospital that they can incubate eggs and nurture turtles that are damaged and all that. As well as an educational facility to bring in school kids or college students and otherwise to learn about it and get into that field as well. And he brought some renderings. It's a really cool facility, and they're fundraising. So again, the organization is Gulf Center for Sea Turtle Research, and it was Dr. Chris Marshall that was heading that up. He also said that if you do see turtles on the beach or a turtle, to call 866-TURTLE-5. I don't have the numbers, just the Turtle 5. If you do see it, because it's really important to help in identifying, gather those eggs to help the population grow. So it was really interesting. Next we had the Park Board's environmental coordinator, Elizabeth Schneider. And she gave kind of a review of her 2023 projects that she's working on. First is I talked last month, they have these free litter bag program, and it's kind of like a onion sack or coffee sack or something that you see. Pardon?
Fruit sack.
Great, yes, that. And what they're going to do is have 3 different stations, one at East Beach, one somewhere along the seawall, and one down here in Isla del Sol. And it'll just be a thing on the beach with these bags on it, and you get the bag, take it to wherever you're going to hang out on the beach, and throw your trash in it, and either take it with you or dump it out and have the bag for somebody else to use or whatever. But this program has been on the Guadalupe River and others in Texas, and it's been really successful in helping people be more considerate of their trash and provide a tool for them to collect it with instead of just a trash can there. So we'll start seeing those here on spring break is when they're going to have the goal of getting those out. Another project is beach toy boxes. So they're going to have 3 different boxes that are being made. 2 of them were made by members of the park board and the Children's Museum. And then an Eagle Scout is working on his project, and so he's building one. But essentially it's just a big handmade box that has beach toys in it. And so they're going to have one at Pocket Park 2, and then there's 2 other areas that they're currently evaluating, and those are kind of to be determined. But they're going to get those out there as well. So that's kind of a cool thing. Sure.
Because I saw this surface on Facebook, and there's a lot of concern that it's just going to turn into a big trash pile. Who is going to be monitoring that on a regular basis?
The trash or the toys?
The toys.
Okay.
Turning into a trash pile.
Okay, so the park board obviously has their crews that go through and pick up trash on the beach and that kind of thing. So I would assume at this point that they're going to be putting the stuff back in the box or somehow maintaining
I've learned
that.
to never assume.
Yeah,
Everybody
okay.
has to get an answer.
Very wise, thank you. So I'll ask Elizabeth, that's a very good question, but I don't have the answer, so. So I'll follow up and I'll let you know. Thanks, Marie. Also, the Beach Ambassador Program is a program that the Parks Board does where any citizen, Boyd's a member of one of those groups, you get a little packet with a trash pickup grabber thing and some gloves and sunscreen, a bucket to put the trash in, whatever, and it's for, all of us love to walk on the beach, and as you're going, you can help and pick up stuff. So they started this year recognizing members of the community that have volunteered to do that group and otherwise. So January's group that we recognize was Greg Hertz, and Boyd and Helen are part of that group as well. This month for February was Gene Zimmerman, who's also a West Ender. So thank you. So anybody that's interested in doing that, contact the park board or talk to Boyd or Gene and find out about it. But it's a pretty cool program. So. Yes, sir.
Just for everybody's recognition, Gene's picked up over 2,000 bottle caps since we started the program that are on the beach. Got rid of them. How amazing to count them.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, good. So thanks for that. The next program is the Go Green program, and Elizabeth's been meeting with local restaurateurs, business owners, and otherwise they have a little pledge to recycle and to be more environmentally friendly in their practices, and encouraging that. So she's working on that to grow that program and have a recognition sticker or something at their entrance to signify that they're a member of that Go Green program. She's also working with a company called Ineos, and they're going to be placing, from my understanding, recycling receptacles on beaches. Right now they're talking about 12 different ones, but I don't think it's anything set in stone at this point, but that's something that they're working on as well for the environmental part of it. A big important one for us, the Delanera Beach Renourishment Project, and Marie, you may want to add if I don't cover everything, but they gave an update on that. It's 2,100 linear feet of beach. That equates to 118,668 cubic yards of beach quality sand. There's only 25,000 left to go to build that to a 5-foot elevation. They're doing it was a lot of cost overrun from when they initially did the engineering on it. So kind of one of the cutbacks, they did a truck haul instead of the barge out pumping the sand up. So if you've seen a lot of the not 18-wheelers, the dump trucks coming out, 10, 12 at a time, that's what that is. They're hauling sand to that beach to build it up. So it's almost complete. It should be done, they're saying by the end of February, so the next couple of weeks.
That's not the same that's coming down the beach, right? That's a different.
They're bringing sand to that project at
Is that
Dillon.
going to continue down the west end, or is that just that neighborhood?
Yes, sir. For right now, that's that project. Now, building on that, the next one is that they're doing the engineering right now they're doing the engineering now through the end of the year to go from Delanera all the way to the state park, okay? And the engineering process is right now, they're looking at 2024 as the estimate to start the project once the engineering is done and everything's contracted out and all that and budgeted and all that stuff. So that would again go from Delanera to the state park. After that would conclude, it continues after that, but that's years down the road. So they are inching their way down. The last thing she covered was the Seaweed Emergency Relocation Program. The open registration started February 1st. Each neighborhood has until May 1st to sign up if you wish to participate. And that's the emergency relocation. So it's not just, hey, there's some stuff on the beach, come clean it. That's the inundation that we had back in 2014 where it was 3 feet high and as far as you could see. So if you're interested in participating in that program, which I think the last couple of years we've had 10 or 12 different neighborhoods that have done that, you pay a deposit based on the linear feet of your beach, and it's either $3,000 or $10,000, I believe. The park board keeps that on hand for a year, and then at the end of the year, you don't use those funds, you get that money refunded back, you reapply, you redo your your deposit, and they keep it on hand again. Should there be a need to use those funds, it comes off of your deposit until you reach a certain threshold, then you have to replenish that, but thankfully in 9 years we haven't had to do that. So if you're interested, give the park board a look up and you can sign up for that. The March meeting, we're going to review the capital expense plan for this year. Dr. Hal Needham is going to give a sargassum forecast, which last time he did that, it was really good. So hopefully we'll have another quiet season. World Oceans Day update, and that's going to be June 8th, and that's the Artist Boat sponsors that down on East Beach, and it's a really cool event. And then also they'll be giving an update on the Blue Flag program, which is a worldwide recognition for a lot of different criteria to get a Blue Flag designation. So Galveston's trying to get that, and it's a pretty prestigious thing. So it'll be interesting to get the update on that, so I'll bring that to you next month. Thank you.
Any questions? There's a question.
Yes, sir.
Where's the sand coming from that they're trucking to Delanera?
I'm not going to assume, but I believe that it's coming from the dredging from the ship channel.
It's Texas International Terminals.
Texas International Terminals.
When they dredge their piers, the sand coming from there.
So it's piled up over there and they load it in trucks.
But why did they're paying per load versus cumulatively? And then they're wondering why they have overruns?
So that question came up, and the answer was the contract amount is we'll call it, it's way more obviously, $10,000. The contractor goes out and hires the best way to get the sand there. Here's what we're paying you. So, because the question that was asked in the committee was, are we weighing the trucks to be sure that they are fully loaded or not, or are they getting paid per trip or by volume? The answer was that it doesn't matter. They're getting paid to apply 118,668 cubic yards of, I almost said dirt, sand. If it takes them 100 trips in a truck, or if it takes them 10, they're getting paid the same amount. So it's on the contractor to make sure that the trucks are all loaded, and they do have a representative that's at the collection site that's seeing the trucks be loaded and sent off and all that. So that's the answer that was given.
And to the people, I've gotten multiple calls from about how fast the trucks are driving and how recklessly the city is ticketing them.
Yes, and that was brought up as well, is that some of them do drive faster than my wife. So they have, the police have pulled them over and talked to them and talked to the contractor directly too. So, anybody else have any questions? Peggy, no questions?
No.
Thanks, Craig. Great report. Really appreciate it. Okay, Tim, we never thought we'd get to you. Let me introduce you to Tim Tietjens. He is the Executive Director of the Planning Department for the City of Galveston.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. As Jerry said, I'm Tim Tietjens, the Director of Development Services for the City of Galveston. I've been here about 6 years now with the city, and it's been a pleasure to do what we do. And part of what I'm going to tell you today is what we're doing with the beach access plan in the amendment process. Before I get to that, however, I kind of want to hit on some of the stuff that Sally mentioned. The fact that the project with the coastal spine, or it goes by so many different names, the fact that project is being facilitated at the rate it is really quite amazing, given what hurdles they have to go through to get this stuff done. I will say that it's really beyond even a state interest, because what it's doing is not only protecting the Galveston Bay region, but the Houston Ship Channel itself, where if the worst case storm were to happen, say a 25-foot surge, that a great number of the tanks up in that region would be floating. And it would be an ecological disaster that would be, I don't know if we could even recover from it. So it's critical. It's really of national interest, because 40% of the petro processing in the entire nation is done right up in this area. And 70% of the aviation fuel is processed up in this area. So those aren't just, Houston area, important things. They're not just state of Texas important things. They're important for the nation. And it's really great that we have local elected leaders, state elected leaders that have taken this, to the point that they have. It's really excellent to hear about the sand that is being facilitated in the early stages. I wasn't aware of that, and that will certainly help the little things that we're doing in advance of that, such as CAPRA program renourishments, dune renourishments, CAP 204 through the Corps, doing those kind of beach renourishments as a whole with beneficial use dredge material taken from wherever it's taken, whether it's out the ocean or in the bay itself. That is that's just wonderful.
I wanna make sure that I haven't misled anybody. What is being discussed is the budget details that will include moving the beach and dune system up in the sequencing of project activity. There is no sand sourcing going on right now.
No.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to make clear, nothing's happening yet because there's no money yet.
But none of it can happen until the money discussions
That's
begin to
right.
happen. So
That's right.
advancing all that discussion advances the entire project. And thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
It's us getting to that ultimate, you know, at least the best case scenario of what ultimately might be happening out in front of our island. So, so getting back to the beach access plan, there are some amendments that have been facilitated or applied for from some private development, and we actually are moving on. We've been moving to try to amend the beach and dune access plan for some time. Actually, back in 2004, the beach access plan was initially put together. In 2019, it was amended. It was amended to allow for the beach user fee. And at that time, in 2019, the GLO certified the plan is compliant with state law. And ironically, and somewhat surprisingly, later in that year, we were notified by the GLO that the plan really is not compliant in terms of what's on the ground. So the GLO sort of said, wait a minute, hold up, we're gonna require that you guys, before you do any amendments at all, get that beach access plan compliant with what the plan says. Here's the problem with that. The plan as it was drafted in 2004 is based upon geographic information and assumptions that were never reality. The fact that, you know, each individual neighborhood had X amount of parking defined in the plan, and that was based upon the state's rule of one parking stall for every 15 linear feet of beach. And we all know that parking stalls aren't 15 feet long. The fact that that information was sent up to them and approved, and they're holding our feet to the fire on what that 2004 plan says is particularly frustrating. It's been frustrating to the city, it's been frustrating to the HOAs, who, when we were told we were non-compliant and they intended to initiate this compliance effort, that you know, we said, well, wait a minute, how does some of this literally get placed? And when we don't have enough, there's not enough linear feet or parking in some of these areas to make it happen. So it was very frustrating. And the reason we found out that these numbers were so far off is we have, currently we have a geographic information system, which our city uses to analyze all kinds of stuff from the drainage master plan and flooding spots to traffic counts to all kinds of things. That GIS information produced real, reliable results, and we saw the difference between what was in the 2004 plan, which we were being required to bring back to, you know, that status, and what's literally there on the ground. But basically, most of the compliance issues had to do with signage, as Marie mentioned. A lot of it is signage. There were also, you know, the amount of parking, which we had to designate in each individual subdivision area. And we worked with so many subdivisions throughout the community, and I really want to thank anybody who was involved in that throughout the last couple of years, 2-3 years really. As we sat down individually with each neighborhood association, we tried to facilitate their desires first, to the extent that you know, they were able to achieve compliance. Great. Some other things that were of interest to the GLO was what about things like access points that perhaps got washed away during Ike or what have you? And it's interesting, again, that these things were non-compliant during and after Ike. They were somehow compliant in the 2019 certification, and then later in the year they weren't compliant again. So this back and forth is somewhat frustrating for us. So, with all that said, we partnered with the HOAs to try to have a plan individually tailored to meet compliance on their individual sections, and a great majority of them did without a whole lot of fuss. You might argue that. I know some folks had real issues in literally in gathering enough capital from subdivision to build their dune walkovers that had gone away and those kind of things, and we appreciate that. But with that said, as of February 2nd, we received a letter back from the GLO that said, finally, you are in compliance. So,
Feb 2nd of this year, 2023, correct?
that's correct, February 2nd of this year. So it was about 3 years worth of activity under which no beach access amendment could occur. So as I said earlier, there are significant investments that are pending that really can't be facilitated without the amendment process. And so having the compliance is the first step, because as you know, GLO doesn't allow us to, or as you may not know, maybe you do, the GLO does not allow us to even apply for the amendments until that compliance is achieved. Now, with that compliance, I'll put a caveat in it, because they said, we acknowledge that while each individual HOA has received compliance throughout the whole city, there have been some subsequent non-compliance that's cropped up. It's basically due to signage. Signage that, either
People
has been
steal.
hit.
They steal it.
Pardon me?
People steal the signs. I don't
People
know
steal
why, but
signs.
they do.
People, in fact, put up other signs that aren't allowed. Those kind of things happen. And as much as we, dislike the fact that we're out there putting other signs in and all, the GLO wanted us to put a policy in place for maintenance of that signage, so that we could sort of continue to certify compliance as we go forward. As we move forward into the amendment process, however, we're going to be changing some things, and it might be things like reducing the number of access points, perhaps, because a lot of these subdivisions have multiple access points. By state law, there is one required every half mile, and many of the subdivisions were platted with much greater access than that. Anyhow, there's various things that are in that access, but so the GLO, while they gave us that letter on February 2nd, it was contingent upon creating this policy. We have since sent our maintenance policy up to the GLO, and we haven't heard back yet, but we should get word back any day. And it clearly will comply with the maintenance, our policy will comply with their maintenance schedule. So we expect to get the official word of compliance just any day now. But it's basically conceptually approved as we stand. Okay, so now what happens when compliance is achieved, and what happens in the amendment process? So again, as I mentioned, we're trying to facilitate sort of the lowest hanging fruit and the pending development requests that we have for developers investing hundreds of millions in the city, and to try to get those moving as priority one. That is now all ongoing, and it was in early August, I believe it was, that we passed got to City Council a preliminary informal review of what we're planning to focus on for the amendment. Council was conceptually good with what we had put forward, And we sent that up to the GLO. Then as a result, again informally, because we can't physically submit a plan until that compliance letter is received. I'm sorry, can't physically submit the amendment until that compliance letter is received. But we wanted to at least get GLO's comments on what we had drafted thus far. They sent us a letter back right around Christmas that said, you know, great portions of this are okay, and other portions we believe don't comply with state law or the intent of state law and things of that nature. And so what we really have to do is we've kind of assembled a task force as such of folks in the Planning and Development Division, along with the Coastal Division, and the City Manager's Office to go into what we're going to do with this amendment process. And it's going to be probably a two-phase approach where we look at the things that are clearly allowable under state law, or the things that we believe are allowable under state law, and the things that GLO is claiming aren't allowable under state law, which we might have to debate. And then the second phase would be sort of pulling those that they claim are not, the things that would hold up their approval, and taking those and putting them into the second phase. Of course, there's much more than involved in that plan amendment than just developer requests and you know, low fruit kind of tweaking. The ad hoc committee that did a great amount of work in 17, 18, 19. You guys were at it for a good, well over a year.
Yes.
Couple of years, yeah. Including, got a bit of a cold, sorry. Including those items as well. And once we get around to what City Council then wants to include in the plan fully, through either sort of this phase one, the things that we know are state approvable, and the things that might be not state approvable, but we're gonna battle with the GLO because we interpret things differently. So it's kind of in a two-phase approach like that. I think that once we have the phase one issues through, the phase two issues will begin to roll. The timing on that, of course, is that you have to have an official council action before the GLO really reviews them. So we will have to work in there an ordinance approval that City Council will say, here's the stand we want to take on these items, and then it goes up for GLO's review in an official channel thereafter. Again, remember that what we submitted in August was just an informal sort of comment-based analysis of the plan. Those are the procedural aspects of this plan amendment process. Are there any questions I might answer about that?
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
When you say it's compliant, are you talking about the 2004?
Yes.
Oh, and not the 2019 one?
Well, 2004, the only amendment to the 2019 was the addition of the beach user fees, and there were a couple of insignificant sort of Scrivener kind of changes, but it goes back to the 2004 plan, which again is difficult to ensure or verify as compliant, given the fact that that it was so out of whack to begin with, to be quite honest. Yes, Sally.
I just wanted very briefly to let everyone know that part of what Tim has described, we're trying to address also in legislation. Senator Middleton and Representative Leo Wilson agreed to file a bill for us that addresses the beach access plan amendment review process. And what we're hoping to achieve is allowing GLO to not hold up amendments when one area is out of compliance. In other words, you can be out of compliance in one area of the island, but if you have urgent needs that need to be addressed due to erosion and whatnot, we should be able to proceed with those amendments and have state certified compliance in those areas. So we're working on that. We're also hoping to include, because what he was talking about was the linear feet issue. That's in statute, believe it or not. I mean, you know, so that's antiquated language, that 1 to 15 linear feet. No, I mean, most people are driving SUVs now, you know, so 15 linear feet is just from decades past. So we're hoping to take advantage of the bill that we're trying to file to get some language amendment on that as well. But I just wanted to update folks that that is one of the bills the city's working with Senator Middleton and Representative Leo Wilson.
Yeah, so that second phase is probably gonna have a delay in terms of legislation that might need to be passed and what we're hoping to get from that. But ultimately, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there clearly prior to, whatever the Corps is doing with the Tietjens in front, with the coastal spine and those series of projects. But again, the things that need to be done in advance of that, for example, CAP 204, the continuing authorization program of the Corps, allows for that dredge material to be placed. And I understand that there was a significant attempt to use the CAP 23 money to basically get that stuff out to the west end where it's most needed, where we have the most erosion on the island. And that unfortunately didn't quite get to the Corps in an appropriate time for them to make that switch. So the park board is still going to use the CAP 23 money for their nourishment as they continue on. But there's a difference in perspective. There has been a difference in perspective with us wanting to put the dredge material in a spot where it makes most sense, in our opinion, not in front of a seawall as such. That can always happen at whatever time. But when we're losing houses, we're losing roadways, all those kind of things, that shift in priority perspective was and is necessary, in my opinion. And so that's one of the aspects that we're going to sort of move going forward is the city. These beaches are in Galveston's jurisdiction. It really is Galveston's issue. And of course, the Parks Board wants to do things with the dredge material in other spots. That's great. They can approach those things as well, but we sort of have to have that proprietary interest in our beaches, and that has to come through the city.
And our citizens.
And the citizens, yes. So that's one of the perspectives that is sort of changing a little bit. The fact that we all just need to coordinate better, because anytime we have non-compliance or us operating in silos between organizations, that's never good for anybody. We all need to work together. Let's see. Yes, sir.
Could you simplify what you're looking to do going forward, as opposed to, I know all the past times like that. So what are you looking to change in the plan?
Well, the plan itself includes the vehicular accessible beaches, and one of the things that we have in the current plan update is 2 of the 3 neighborhoods that have requested these changes. That's been included in our draft. So we're facilitating that first and foremost, development requests that are going to add value to the city of Galveston. Second is things that we want to do by policy. For example, there's a rule that says, no swimming pools within 1,000 miles from mean high tide.
1,000 feet.
What did I say? No swimming pools till Oklahoma. I apologize. And that rule is a hard, fast rule that the GLO perpetuates, regardless of really what's in front of it. So if we have 3005, for example, and the entire, TxDOT infrastructure that's there, and they're saying somebody on the back side of that can't build a pool outside of the footprint of their home, it's just, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So there are clearly cases in our access plan that just don't make a whole lot of sense, and that's one of the things we want to change. I know we're going to get kickback from the GLO about doing that because it's their policy. But again, there are things that we'd like to do in that regard. I don't know if I'm making this easier or simplifying.
You can stay at a higher level. I mean, is there a change of the ratio of the number of cars, the size of the beach, and parking spots? I mean, I'm one of these people that have been doing it since Jerry and I fought with all the GLO. So, did you just simplify? Is anything major changing?
The problem with the parking is that ratio is by statute. So you have to get a statute change on that.
And you've got to continue with that.
Well,
are we gonna have to put more cars in Carter's Beach or less?
No, less cars. Because number
That-
one.
that's what we're moving for.
That's all I need to know.
Yeah, I mean, if say we, for example, let's say we go to, or we're able to convince the legislature to go to a 1 to 20. That reduces 25% of the parking need.
All on board, I'm on board.
Yes, and that's just an example of one of the things along with the pool. There are several policy-related things in addition to these developments that we want to facilitate as well.
Well, an example would be the Tierra project that's going in next to Diamond Beach. The GLO said, we want that built on, you can't put a concrete foundation, we want you to use fiberglass. Well, you can't build a building on fiberglass, but part of that came from our plan.
That's right.
Because our plan only had building for single-family homes. So we're having to amend that.
That's a great example, right?
Yeah.
It's a great example. Yes, ma'am.
Follow-up question.
Sure.
How much effort is put between working with the city from your department or coastal department with the Parks Board efforts for beach replenishment?
I think that's being hammered out by council right now. There's a significant amount of interaction. I think that's going to become necessary.
Has it been in the past?
Not necessarily. I think there's just been sort of a perspective of, we're going to do what our charge calls for, and we're going to do what our charge calls for. And while there's been coordination, it hasn't been to the level that it needs to be. We just need to be more effective working together, and we'll get a lot more done working together. The park board certainly can become some of the folks that might execute some of the projects on our behalf. We may take them up on aspects of that, but
Well, the major difference that will be is, what is that called, the sand?
the sand sediment strategy.
The sediment strategy. And thanks to Brandon Hill, who was with us and is going to be doing some consulting with us again, it actually said the West End beaches are of no importance to the island. And I can tell you right now, as a city, we are 100% focused on end of the seawall west, because we have to protect our people, our infrastructure, private and public, and that's going to be the major shift.
Good, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
In regards to the amendment that you said you're proposing, you stated that you're submitting 2 of 3 development.
Yes.
Are these new developments or are these existing?
No, these are new proposed developments.
Okay. What about in regards to all the existing developments?
Right. That,
How
that,
will they be helped with this proposed new
I can answer, you want me to answer?
yeah.
I mean, aside from
What-
the parking, I know the.
Let me just say one thing. It's gonna be decided by city council, ultimately. Whether they not, if their perspective is to say, hey, we're interested in pulling every single vehicular beach away or not, it is gonna be something that has to be, debated. There are folks out there who feel that some access points for vehicles on the beach is still necessary. There's some people out there that feel they're not necessary. There's a plurality there of folks who feel, you know, about this, but ultimately, city council's gonna need to determine that.
No, but your neighborhood is a perfect example, Bermuda Beach, which lost its main road when it happened. I lived there, I lost my house, that's what got me into politics. Well, now they've taken over the whole beach and made it a parking lot to be compliant, to replace the parking that used to be on the street that doesn't exist. And that really doesn't make sense. And you can take a topographic photo and show it to the GLO and they're like, wow, that doesn't make sense. So we're addressing new development as well as existing development and what makes the most sense for our citizens as well as complying with the state law and changing it to the betterment of the people.
The other thing that I would like to have addressed is the width of the roads. Bermuda Beach is one of the examples. Our road is only 11 feet wide in areas. And you've got it set up, I know it's to compliance, everyone understands that. But the other day, the UPS truck couldn't get to my street because of cars parked on one side of the street. The other side is no parking.
And that's
UPS
what
truck can't get through, what's a
But
fire truck
that's
gonna do?
the goal, is to stop things like that. But in the interim, we had to be, so we're asking for your patience because we had to meet compliance, even though we all know it's unsafe and makes no sense. But it's the means to the end, which we will achieve.
Do you guys have any idea, I mean, is this possibly within the next year that the first set amendment would
Oh, yeah.
impact us?
Within months.
Within months would be great.
I think the first
It's just we
phase will
never
be.
hear anything, it's just like we're working on it. But, and I know it's government, I know it takes time, it's not good for all the channels. But, you know, just having an idea, are we talking 6 months, are we talking 5 years?
No, I think the first phase we're talking about this year sometime.
So like this parking lot that we now have on the beach in front of Bermuda Beach, could possibly disappear this summer?
No,
I'm not gonna hold you to
Will
it.
not,
I'm
will
just-
not, no, but we will be
Because
able
that's
to.
what we were told last year, was that it was temporary, be gone within a year.
It will be gone as soon as we can, because part of the development that will be happening in that area to the west of you, where then there'll be requirements for them to put in parking lots, which will then allow us to get the cars off the beach.
Got it.
Yeah, and we're also
So
dealing,
someone has bought Marquette's.
Correct.
Okay.
we're also dealing with when the city annexed this area in 2008. Most of that development was already there, a good portion of it at least. And, you know, it used county standards at the time, which weren't real strict. We require a 28-foot, in new platted subdivisions, we require a 28-foot back-to-back of curb to curb with a roadway, and it can be either public or private, but our standards are much different than what was allowed in Galveston County standards of the day.
Was it in
Bermuda
Galveston
Beach
County?
was 68.
What's that?
They were in Galveston County.
Right.
No, they were annexed in 68.
Okay.
What caused the road problem was the Hurricane Columbine.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But nonetheless, I don't know when the subdivision was built. It might have been built prior to annexation. It might have been built after. I just don't know. I can tell you though, the standards that we have in place today contemplate adequate, you know, access, and we unfortunately are forced to sort of accept what we have in terms of existing rights of way. But the matter is complicated when the GLO tells you you have to park, you know, with X amount of parking spaces on this street. It definitely complicates the issue. But you know, our perspective is safety should be priority one. You know, and even though we tell the GLO that, you know, that's not something they really contend with.
Well, Dawn does. I mean, Dawn does it.
Let's hope that the perspective there, the regulatory perspective of the folks that we've been dealing with up there shifts to a little bit more reasonable perspective. All right, anything else in that regard? I would like to introduce to you Kyle Clark. He's our new Coastal Resources Manager. And Kyle took over for Brandon Hill. He's a one-man shop at the moment, and just having come on board. So his learning curve is steep, but he's up to the task. As was mentioned, he's got coastal engineering background. He's got Corps of Engineering background. He's coastal zone certified. Kyle, would you like to say a few words, or?
No, I can't.
It's up to you.
Thank you. I've just wanted to say I'm glad to be here, glad to be with the city, glad to be working here in Galveston. Been down here about 10 years, working the consultant side. I've worked with some of the homeowners associations down here, Spanish grant with Dan Walsh on some core permitting, things like that. So I have some experience down there, so I'm really looking forward to it. And you know, if there's anything I can do to help processes, anything like that, you know, feel free to give me a call. I'm not afraid to leave the office and meet people out on the side if I need to kind of see what's going on, to learn how to, you know, better serve y'all. So that's kind of the role I see. You know, working with the Corps, worked in their permitting program, so I know sometimes just going out and meeting people on the site, you know, answering questions. Don't ever hesitate to ask me to come out there and, you know, look at something with you. Sometimes, you know, it's a lot easier to explain sometimes on the side instead of over the phone or something like that. So feel free to give me a call anytime. Thank you. Yeah.
And so you used to work with dredging. Is there somebody taking your place with the dredging that we now need to contact?
The dredging.
For the, like, Spanish Grant and Sea Isle, and I think you were talking to Bob Matthews?
Yes, that's actually Mike with Sea Isle. So yeah, I've passed on the contact information. So Dan Walsh, Spanish Grant, with the coastal engineers, so they've got contacts. But if there's anything, always reach out to me and I can put you in touch with the people I was working with at T. Baker Smith.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So all that information's been passed on to people at T. Baker Smith to kind of keep those projects going.
Kyle's also a new member of the Beach Maintenance Advisory.
Yeah, I was actually been there, started this year on the business side, so I have to let them know that they need to pick another business since I'll be serving the city now. But yeah, so I've been there for about last 3 or 4 meetings. Started last September, I think, is when we got put into place. So been attending those meetings, so working with the park board in that capacity.
What is your job description?
So Tim could probably tell you a little bit better. So right now I'm over the coastal permits, you know, the permits, and I'm working on assisting and updating the plans, dune protection, beach access plans. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
You work for him?
Yes, sir.
But to understand, and Marty, you've been in this game a long time, Terri, you've been in this game, Peggy, you've been in this game a long time. The difference with the city now is the city is actually taking responsibility for their beaches, which we've never really done that. until the last couple years. I mean, in planning, it started with Tim coming on board and then Tim building a coastal team, which we never really had a coastal team. I mean, Dustin Henry was a sweet guy, but he wasn't a coastal guy. Now we're bringing on people from engineering firms. We have the budget to hire consultants. We are addressing this like we should have always addressed it. And that's the biggest difference. And we're blessed to have Kyle, we're blessed to have Tim.
Is there a way to contact you?
I do not have any business cards right now. So if you have Tim's contact, you can reach out to Tim or Marie. They can pass you on to me.
Okay.
So you're the interface with the GLO as far as beachfront construction then?
Yes, sir. I would,
There'll be an update for that?
yes, sir. We'll be the one, I'll be the one sending up the permit applications and all that for the construction permit system. Yes.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you. What is the status of the 2019 beach access plan?
That was approved.
Oh, it's certified or
Yes.
by the GLO?
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Yeah.
That's the reason that we've got the beach access, the structure that we do now.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tim. Always great to have you here.
Pleasure.
Okay. The next meeting we have is March 18th. It's at the Galveston Country Club. And guest speakers are going to be from the Galveston Parks Board of Trustees. This will be our annual meeting, the election of directors and officers, and it'll be the start of our 24th year. So we've been around for a while. If there's anything else, any other questions or anything, thank you all for attending. Have a great day. Marie, you go back to bed.